Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well. Today I'm gonna share with you 5 sound design tricks that I overlook for a very long period of time. And yeah, let's get started. So the first one apply mainly to any parameter which is related to time. If you check the parameter of attack of an envelope, for example, it goes from 0 millisecond to 20 seconds. But for example here, when my attack is also modulating the filter, well, obviously you still have this. The longer you put the attack, the longer it will open the filter and the sound will get louder. But the thing is, there is something that I overlooked for a long time. It's like the first 100 milliseconds are very crucial, and there is a lot happening in terms of tone, like how the tone's gonna change and the characteristic of the sound's gonna change just by changing this attack. So here at 0 I have something plucky, but if I just go like for example at 30 milliseconds, so which is just a small variation, I start to kind of have a flute effect. But if I go to 60 milliseconds, I kind of have a brassy effect. And if I go to 90, similar, but a bit different. And then after from that, it starts to be like similar. It's just like the attack obviously getting longer. And this is something I overlook for a long time, and it's exactly the same for the glide. For example, you will find nice value under the first, let's say 120 milliseconds or 100 milliseconds. And then after, from that point, obviously it will be like the time between the two notes. So yeah, that was my first tip. All right, second things I overlook for a long time is what I call vibrato style modulation, which is basically using a fast LFO to gently modulate something. And I mean anything. For example, I'm gonna modulate my pulse width here with the LFO one. And you can hear it's pretty brutal. And what I mean is like a faster rate. So like this is kind of not really nice. But if I reduce the amount, suddenly I get something much more interesting. And again, it's something I overlook a lot, very often, because I was just like cranking up at least halfway through the amount. And you can go even faster. So it works for the pulse width modulation, but you can try other things like the position of the wavetable, and you can or the amp. And speaking of LFO modulating the amp, I have a trick as well that I often forget, but which is really nice. So you have your system sound like this, and basically if you apply LFO to the amp, and what we want is we want to have the staccato effect. So we're gonna choose the sawtooth waveform and we're gonna put in 16. And we have a kind of staccato effect. So this is, you can tell me like, oh, you can do this the same with the arpeggiator, but it doesn't really sound the same. It's a different effect. I'm not saying arpeggiator is bad, but it's different kind of feelings. And you can do it as well if you both LFO are taken and you still want to apply. You can use autopan, and same with the rate at 16, the phase and offset at 0, shape at 0, sawtooth again, and then you can bring down the amount. And that's really great to add variation. You can have your synth playing more like in the legato mode first, like sustain, and then having another part of your track where it will play more in staccato. So that can be a great way to add variation as well. And finally, a trick I've been using a lot recently is using the modern FX in wavetable and use the warp. And basically if you crank it up positively to 100%, and you play like kind of lower note, you get this nice gritty sound. And I've been using it a lot with the 4-mount waveform, where basically by default I don't really like them, to be honest, but then if I crank up the warp, you get this kind of sawtooth waveform, but with a bit more character. And what I notice as well is in the same time, then I can play with fold and modulate fold to really have like nice variation. And that brings me to my next point is I'm gonna modulate this because it can make the sound evolve, change the tone of your synth without really changing the tone. Like you feel like your synth is evolving, there is something changing, but it's not too abrupt. So I'm gonna click like this. I can modulate the fold with an LFO. Let's go to 100%, we can adjust here. I go to LFO, I remove the retrigger, I want to be in free mode, the LFO, and I put it in sync. And then you can choose, I want to slow rate because I want to evolve slowly over time. So you can hear how it's evolving. And now one trick I can recommend you is to have a rate which is a length different than your MIDI clip pattern, even a different multiple. What I mean by that is here I have 3-bar length loop. And the idea is, for example, to have a modulation which is 4-bar length, because this way what would happen, for example, if I have, this is my pattern, it's 3-bar, so it's gonna repeat over time like this. But then if I apply, this is my LFO, and for example, it's 4-bar loop. So you can see that I need even to continue. Until they resynchronize both together, you have 12-bar. Because you can see here your pattern is going like this, and then when your pattern is restarting, the LFO didn't finish its cycle, and when the LFO finishes its cycle and restart as it was at the beginning, this one is in the middle of the pattern, and then here again the pattern repeat, but the LFO is in the middle of running. So you get the idea. This way you kind of create kind of polymeter variation where your pattern and your LFO have different pattern lengths and different multiple. So this way they don't restart all together and synchronize all together very often. And that's something I like to do. You can do it with the auto pan, you can do it with the auto filter, add some variation. That's a really great way to add variation. Alright guys, I hope you learn a few tricks. I hope next time you will designing your preset, you will think twice about how you're gonna set your attack, how you're gonna set your LFOs. I really wanted to do this video because it's really important sometimes to be subtle on certain parameter, because usually at the beginning you just crank up things like crazy and obviously it doesn't really sound that good. But if you're being a bit more subtle, gentle, sometimes, especially with LFOs, you can have some nice modulation. So yeah, thank you very much for watching guys, and see you soon. Bye bye. And don't forget to like and subscribe.